China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And the aim of this is very nicely said. It's to foster prosperity, security and peace via enhanced connectivity and economic growth. The project includes the Gwadar port, which is what has been having received a lot of attention, but also a network of railroads, roads, electricity production, where also private China companies have been involved. A number of industrial zones have been suggested. There has been capacity building, and also lately more a focus on agriculture. I think it's correct to say that there was a big vision for how CPEC should function, but it has really stalled over the last years for different reasons. One reason is Pakistan's worsened economic situation, where there has been problems of repayment of the loans, but also a bit of political uncertainty in Pakistan with change of governments. But I think a major reason, and that this is where we will also start a bit today, is the increased worsened security situation, where we have seen a rise of 70% in terrorist attacks in 2024. Some of these has been targeted towards Chinese project and Chinese workers. It has been a major bone of contention in the relationship between Pakistan and China, where China is asking for better security, questions coming up about using own security guards, difficult questions to handle and stay hands off. But historically, Pakistan has not only looked towards China for funding, they have also at times been a very close ally and received generous support from the United States. And how do now to balance this as the geopolitical situation is changing? Where do China find their place? Where do they find their donors? Where do they seek one or the other, or they try to balance this? So the questions we have outlined for today is: how does China's engagement in Pakistan impact on conflict dynamic domestically and geopolitically? How is China perceived by local stakeholders? And where do Pakistan position itself in the new geopolitical struggle between the US and China? And this is where our expert from the Pak Institute of Peace Studies comes in. And I briefly introduce you so the audience are aware of your background before you are called to the floor. Mohammed Amir Rana is the president of the Pak Institute for Peace Studies, and I would say a very renowned expert on counterterrorism and regional security. I hear from Islamabad that you are frequently called upon when embassies need to understand what is going on. But you're also a regular column in Dawn, the English newspaper in Pakistan, editor of Pakistan Annual Security Report, your English research journal. Safdar Hussain is PIP's managing director, and you actually worked with PIP since 2007, I noticed. But you also have a master's degree in political science. You have been focusing on conflict and insecurity and violence both in Pakistan and Afghanistan, published extensively, and are co-authors of several books on this topic, just to mention a few of the things. And then Hasrat Bilal is your PIP's project coordinator, and he's crucial in the project we have because he's doing the social monitoring and analysis, and this is part of what he will present to us today. But I think I'd like you, Safdar, to start first with an issue on the security situation, and then we follow up with the others. So please. I just need to get, if you go in.
Thank you very much, Arna. And we are really delighted to be at this platform, very distinguished platform, to present some findings from the project we are focusing. I have two presentations. I will be very brief so that we have time for interaction and more question and answer session. I will start with terrorism trends in Pakistan in 2024 and key highlights. So, if you see this It's not moving. Yeah. This is a chart that describes the trends of terrorist attacks inside Pakistan since 2015. This is important to see how the number of terrorist attacks changed year to year. So from 2015, we saw there has been a declining trend in the number of terrorist incidents, but that trend couldn't sustain beyond 2021. So you can say it's a coincidence, but this is the year when Afghan Taliban took power in Kabul, and since then there has been an increase in number of terrorist incidents from 2021 onward. In the last year, 24, there had been 306 incidents, 521 incidents of terrorism, which caused 852 deaths. And these deaths includes the civilians as well as the military and security forces personnel. So, geographical spread of these terrorism incidents is not uniform across the country. There have been some regions where the terrorist violence has been more pronounced. If we see the western flank on this map, this is map of Pakistan. So we see this is almost fully colored, and the red and brown red, these are two areas where we see the number of terrorist incidents more than 20 and 30 respectively in the year. So most of these regions we see, it is the center, this is the south of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province that borders on Afghanistan. If we go down, this is entire Balochistan, and within Balochistan we see that Kech district that is very close to Gwadar port, that is the linchpin of this China-Pakistan economic corridor. And then we see this Panjgur, it is yellow, more than 10 incidents, and all of this region within Balochistan is green. That means at least 10 incidents happened in the year. But this is critical, this part, this south of KP. This is from where the Taliban, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, started their infiltration from Afghanistan side. They consolidated in this region and gradually they expanded. So if we see to 2025, because that is not reflected in this map, but we know this region is also almost red in this year. So they started from here, south, and this south, why it is important? Because this linked to some provinces, Pakhtia, Paktika host within Afghanistan, where the TTP has its safe havens. So its militants are mainly concentrated in that region within Afghanistan. So it was easy for them, and this is central. This is central in the sense that it connects to rest of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, it connects to the mainland Pakistan, Punjab, and down to this Balochistan region. So southern Punjab, Balochistan, and the central and northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So this becomes the center. So this was very strategic for Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan to first consolidate in this region and then move beyond. So this violence reflected through different colors is not only TTP. There are some other groups also which we will see later on. But in this part, which is Balochistan, mostly this violence is perpetrated by the Baloch insurgent groups. And this region is mainly by Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, some other local Pakistani Taliban. And here you see one district that is red. This is Bajor in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So this is the region where there is a multitude of terrorist organizations, including Islamic State and Tehreek-e-Taliban and some others. So this has cross-border linkages in Afghanistan with the regions where Islamic State has been present. And this we call the Salafist belt, starting from Bajor there to Kunad in Afghanistan. So this is some, we should distinguish basically the perpetrators in different regions, how they are making these regions more vulnerable to terrorist violence. So if we discuss briefly the terrorist trends, In 2024, we already have seen the geographical focus, and that is over 95% of terrorist violence in 2024 was just concentrated in these two districts which I have just discussed, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. So the rest of the country is relatively safer. So number of incidents have been very sporadic, very few. Secondly, the cross-border incursions, some hints I just provided from which region these incursions has been happening. That is the link to South Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and then Bajor. And then if we go back, if we go to this slide, these incursions are also happening here in Balochistan, that is to Chaman border with Afghanistan, and to some extent within with Iran here, where Baloch insurgents, Balochistan province, they have some links with Iran. And thirdly, last year there was very pronounced sectarian violence in one district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. It is Khurram district, that also links with Afghanistan, but this sectarian violence basically is a local phenomenon. It has been ongoing historically as intertribal conflict, but intertribal conflict is also linked to some sectarianism because those tribes subscribe to different Islamic sects. It is Sunni and Shia tribes which have been fighting with each other, but recently some sectarian violent groups have joined this conflict, and Sunni and Shia violent groups, sectarian violent groups have come in to escalate this conflict within this particular region. There were 24 violent incidents, sectarian related, which caused 234 deaths. So from this we can assess how extensive and intense attacks these could be, that 24 incidents caused 234 killings. If we want to discuss the primary targets, mostly the security forces, over 60% of attacks, these over 500 attacks, over 60% of these attacks were directed against security forces. Civilians, and as Arna mentioned, the CPEC projects, Chinese nationals, and those were also targeted. Some examples are attacks on Chinese interest in Karachi and Kech and Gwadar. So major terrorist groups I already mentioned within different regions. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, and it perpetrated 192 attacks last year, which caused 299 fatalities. It's mainly operating in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, as we saw in that slide, and with growing its influence within other parts like northern Balochistan, southern Punjab, and Karachi to some extent. Tactics they have been employing that include the direct firing, infantry fire, and then IEDs, different explosives, suicide bombings, targeting mainly the security forces. Second major actor is Balochistan Liberation Army, and it has been carrying out attacks mainly in Balochistan. Previously, its activities were focused on South Balochistan, but last year they have been more active in central Balochistan and to some extent to north, because north is mainly the Pashtun belt, and there the Taliban are mainly present and active. So operations, it conducted 107 last year, and only 2 were in Karachi, rest were in Balochistan. So BLA recently has been known for sophisticated suicide bombings, implying even the female suicide bombers, ambushes, sieges and roadblocks, and effective social media propagation. And the most recent attack was where they hijacked one train in Bulan district and kept it for almost 24 hours, and after multiple casualties that was released. Third major actor is Islamic State Khorasan. It conducted 20 attacks with 54 fatalities. We already discussed the regions where it is mainly active. It is Bajor in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and some districts in Balochistan, mainly Mastung. And some other groups included the Balochistan Liberation Front, Hafiz Gul Bahadur Group, and Lashkar-e-Islam. Liberation Front is in Balochistan, the others are in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So, which ones of these groups have been threatening to China-Pakistan economic corridor and have been more vocal against Chinese engagement within Pakistan? So at the top we have Baloch insurgent groups. So there is no distinction. They all the Baloch insurgent groups and the nationalist political parties, most of them have been against any development projects which they think is exploitation of Balochistan's resources. And the same goes for China, because the nationalist insurgents believe that China is part of that scheme, that federal scheme, the federal government scheme to source extraction from Balochistan and without minimum benefit for the Baloch people. The Majid Brigade especially, this is suicide wing of Balochistan Liberation Army, has been targeting the Chinese interest, CPEC projects in Karachi and other parts of Balochistan like Gwadar. Examples are October 2024 suicide bombing near Karachi airport, and then later on one suicide attack in Kech, Turba, that is close to Gwadar. So mostly they are employing this tactic of suicide bombings to create maximum impact, to attract maximum international attention towards their activities. So that's the reason they claim that they are hitting those targets which can bring the international attention to their activities. So that's why the Karachi airport attack, Chinese national CPEC projects, and the incidents like hijacking train. So these incidents make highlights internationally so that they can make their presence and their grievances felt across the world. Second main group, which rarely claims attacks on Chinese engagements, but it is part of this campaign against China and CPEC project, that is the TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, and its affiliates, mainly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So even if they don't claim, but they have been attacking Chinese interest within Pakistan, like in 2024 there was attack in Bisham, one district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. There is the Dasu Dam project, that's a huge project, and China is engaged in that project. So they killed Chinese engineers in one suicide bombing. Similar attack they had conducted in 2021, and in that attack also around 7 Chinese were killed. So they never claimed, but the later investigations revealed that Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and some local factions of Taliban and other groups, they collaborated for perpetrating these attacks. So even if they don't claim and even if they don't target Chinese, another significant feature of their terrorist violence is they create overall insecurity within the country. They through their violence, they create such an environment in which the projects like CPEC become vulnerable, and then the foreign investors, they are simply deterred. They wouldn't come to invest within Pakistan. Thirdly is the Islamic State Khorasan. This group has recently not conducted any attack against Chinese interest and Chinese project, but it has been very vocal. Ideological front is so strong that they have been continuously propagating hatred and propaganda against China, against Chinese engagement, and there are multiple reasons for that. They want to target any country that collaborates with Afghan Taliban because they are enemies within the Afghanistan. And secondly, they highlight the grievances of Uyghur Muslim community. And in Afghanistan recently they have conducted some attacks, like there was attack on one hotel where Chinese individuals were staying. But in Pakistan their last attack was in 2017. Since then they didn't conduct any attack on Chinese national interest, but their propaganda, their media, social media propagation is so powerful that it can it can trigger certain violence by use of some individuals who are influenced by this group. These different regions have different threats to CPEC, and we see that in South Punjab, that is the main CPEC alignment. We call it central alignment. Alignment means the infrastructure, roads and railway lines which have been planned and which have been established to some extent from where they pass. The main alignment which has been more than 60% completed, that is central alignment that passes through South Punjab also, but there is low threat in this region because Punjab, as we earlier saw, is relatively safe. But the main threat is in Karachi in Sindh. Rest of the province is relatively safer because in Karachi there is some presence of Baloch insurgent groups, and we have seen some attacks in the past on Chinese engineers there and workers. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the threat is medium from TTP and Islamic State Khorasan, and it's one keynote of CPEC, that is western passes through this southern districts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where the violence is very much rife these days. But major and critical threat to Chinese interest and engagements within Pakistan is in Balochistan. And that is the region where it is the Gwadar port that we earlier saw. It's the linchpin project for CPEC, and other CPEC projects are there, like Sandak project is there, and so all these projects are seen locally. We will see in the next presentation how the local people see Chinese engagements within the province. So they are seen as exploitative by the Baloch insurgent groups. So mostly the attacks are happening on CPEC projects and Chinese interest in Balochistan. If we see the state responses to terrorism or countering terrorism and CPEC security, mostly there have been kinetic actions. Kinetic actions mean the use of force through military and security forces, and there has been increase in such actions. Last year even, for instance, the militant number who were killed in these actions increased by 66% overall across the country. So that gives a glimpse of escalation in these kinetic actions against different terrorist organizations within the country. And there are some federal and provincial arrangements to provide security to CPEC projects, and including the sites and the workers. There was one particular security division established in 2016 that is called the SSD, or Special Security Division. This is dedicated force for CPEC protection. There are some special protection units within the province, mainly Sindh and Punjab have these units activated. The rest are not so functional, and these SPUs are basically within the police jurisdiction. We call them counter-terrorism departments of police, CTDs. So they are working in different provinces. They also look after the security for CPEC projects. Overall, apart from that, there is huge security infrastructure that is not specifically for CPEC and Chinese security, but it helps in overall security arrangements. We have Army, Frontier Corps, and police, and its counter-terrorism departments and levies. These all military, paramilitary and law enforcement agencies, they are deployed across the country. Their deployment is different for different regions. We can see later if someone is interested in that. But they are also overall contributing to securing the environment where such projects and such engagements can be implemented. With China, Pakistan have some particular arrangements. Those are just in fledgling phase. For instance, there is enhanced security and intelligence cooperation. The discussion on further security cooperation is going on. Last month, Pakistan's ambassador in China, they were talking with Chinese counterparts. Some arrangements, maybe it could include Chinese more engagement in security infrastructure within the country, but Pakistan so far has resisted this option of boots on the ground, and other options Pakistan is open to discuss. But there has been locally some enhanced security measures also, like mentioned the 2024 attack in Bisham. After that, the security was further beefed up. Personal security for some Chinese company, they have personal security guards, especially in Gwadar. That is also one arrangement, localized arrangement for security. What are the challenges in countering terrorism? First of all, as I mentioned, the spike in terrorist incidents within the country increased after 2021. So that is the main challenge now, how to engage with the Afghan Taliban government. Because without that engagement, without that cooperation and collaboration on securing the border and on countering terrorism, some joint mechanism for that, without that we don't think Pakistan will be in position to counter this threat single-handedly. There are some socio-economic grievances with the different regions. Those grievances sometimes are linked to exclusively to Pakistan's government, how it treats with the peripheral regions, and then secondly linked to Chinese engagement, that they see it is resource exploitation, and for local there is no benefit of CPEC. Thirdly, the regional instability is also contributing to this environment where more and more militant groups are operating within region, Afghanistan, Pakistan. So overall, this instability is the issue where Pakistan needs to engage more with Iran, because the Baloch insurgent groups have some cross the border movements. Similarly, from Iran has grievances that those groups which are attacking its Sistan Balochistan province, they have safe havens within Pakistan. So these cross border movements within the region, they are very critical for this regional instability. So this bilateral or trilateral regional collaboration within the countries is very important to evolve certain mechanism where they can see security, regional stability as a shared concern, and then have some practical policy options to work on that. In Pakistan, we have seen recently that there is a lack of mistrust growing and state-society relations that is weakening. So this basic social contract is under threat within the country. So that is something which constrains Pakistan's security forces and the government to properly implement the counter-terrorism policies, either they are kinetic or political, whatever. Because without the collaboration and cooperation from the communities, it is very important and difficult to counter these threats. Especially in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, this mistrust has been growing, and people in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they don't want the security forces' presence in the province, nor they want the militants in the province. They are fully against security forces and against the militants. They want both of them to be out of the province. So in this environment, it's very difficult for the security forces to continue their action. And secondly, there is no political move, and this approach is imbalanced. That is the last point. And there is only kinetic actions. Soft approaches, those are the political approaches, and socio-cultural engagement, that is missing. So without engaging the communities, without taking all the stakeholders on board and engage in these soft political negotiations, so this only kinetic actions can clear certain areas, but how to hold those areas, how to eradicate the root causes and structural factors of terrorism, insecurity and insurgency, that is something that is linked to softer approaches of countering terrorism and countering extremism. In Pakistan, those are largely missing. So this was the first presentation, and we now move on to other, that is specific to Balochistan province because, as I earlier said, that mainly the threat is within Balochistan, and main grievances of the people are also from Balochistan. So this second presentation is based on field work we conducted as part of this project. We conducted interviews within Balochistan with the people who are well aware of the developments going on there within the province. And I have made some analysis of those interviews, the key highlights which I can share here. First of all, what we inferred from those interviews is that there is a paradox or contradiction between the strategic priorities of CPEC and other development projects which Pakistan is undertaking along with China. So there are certain strategic priorities. The local resource persons from Balochistan, they think those strategic priorities don't align well with the local development needs within the province. So Chinese strategic focus within the province could be that part of the larger Belt and Road initiative, and to certain Chinese mining projects are there, like Sandak Copper Gold project is there, and other lead zinc project is there. Both are managed by Chinese company MMC, metallurgical company. So these mainly align with China's geopolitical goals, such as securing maritime access and resource extraction. So this is what people within Balochistan, they think that this is linked to China's strategic priorities. So this is not something which is meant for the Baloch people, because local marginalization is happening under these projects. So development remains secondary. Projects lack local employment opportunities. Mostly the workforce that is employed on these projects, that is from outside, either from other provinces, and mainly Chinese workers and engineers. So one aspect is that the local Baloch youth is not also educated and trained technically. So for that there was some provision within this project that training institutes will be developed where the Baloch youth can be trained, but that has not happened so far. So this is the main concern. But this is something that comes from the nationalist and media and resource persons, but there are some pragmatic people also, the officials, who think it will help the Baloch people in their economic needs and socio-cultural uplift. So this disconnect between strategic imperatives and Balochistan's socio-economic needs, if we see it in some theoretical framework, so it basically underscores neo-colonial dynamic. And while CPEC is framed as a game changer, but its implementation mirrors extractive practices, prioritizing infrastructure over human development. So this aligns with the critiques of BRA as a vehicle of geopolitical influence rather than equitable growth. How is the CPEC's interface with the conflict within Balochistan? This conflict, or you can say the Balochistan or Baloch insurgency, because different insurgent groups are operating. So this insurgency, this is the fifth phase of this insurgency. This is not recent. Baloch conflict has been going on since Pakistan was established, and this fifth phase of this conflict started after 2005, and it is more intense in terms of intensity of violent incidents and frequency of violent incidents. So, first of all, I want to highlight that this CPEC has only securitized the whole province. So more and more deployment of security forces and law enforcement structures. Military presence and security forces' presence is mainly to protect Chinese personnel, has intensified local tensions. Baloch insurgents also mainly target Chinese project as a symbol of exploitation. And overall cycle of violence, because if there is insurgent violence, obviously, as we saw earlier, there has been more kinetic actions from the government side to counter this terrorism threat. So this cycle of violence is ongoing. So this is also a product of this new dynamic, that increased terrorist violence and then increased counter-terrorism actions. So this cycle has also intensified. So this intensification is also basically creating such an environment within the province where the local grievances are growing, and also the environment for foreign funding and foreign investment is shrinking. So there has been a perceived sense of marginalization and exploitation within the province, and that is mainly due to securitization of development. This reflects a flawed security development nexus basically. So militarization alienates communities, validating insurgent narratives of oppression. So if we want to see this paradox more in depth, it highlights the limitations of state-centric security frameworks in addressing root causes of disconnect, such as political exclusion and resource inequity. There has been multiple economic and political constraints, and these constraints necessitate certain needs. The things which need to be done within the province, first of all, there is a need for political resolution, because that political resolution will contribute to a sustainable and equitable development. At present, how the Baloch feel about the political landscape within the province, they think they don't have the genuine representation within the parliament. And this process, they think it is almost entirely politically engineered, where the genuine representatives are not allowed to contest elections in a free and fair environment, so they don't get into the parliament. Governance reforms are required, because when the representatives are not genuine and they come through political engineering processes, so they don't deliver, they don't provide service delivery, so their main focus remains on corruption and they are inefficient. Thirdly, this federal province balance needs to be restored. From the very beginning, the major grievance within the province has been that the federal government has been controlling everything within the province, including the politics, including the security, including the economic development. So that imbalance needs to be redressed. Without that, this conflict, these constraints within the development paradigm that's going on, including through CPEC and other projects, is not going to be addressed properly. And then finally, this debt sustainability, because CPEC's loan structures favor Chinese investor. So this is one key finding from those interviews. Just let me remind you, this is based on those interviews. If we conclude this economic and political constraints, and based on that certain needs, we can say that CPEC's economic model risks entrenching dependency, echoing critiques of debt trap diplomacy, and politically centralized decision making exacerbates center periphery tensions, reflecting Pakistan's broader struggles within this federalism framework. These constraints challenge CPEC's viability as a tool for national cohesion. Recently, there have been some grassroots resistance movements within the province. Socio-cultural aspect is very much pronounced in those movements. There was a few years back, one person from Gwadar, he started this Haq Do Tehreek, that means give us our rights. So this was right movement. It successfully forced some concessions for the people in Gwadar, and fishing rights for the fishermen there in Gwadar district. But later we will see how such leadership is co-opted by the state. Second name that is more recent is Maharang Baloch. She has been very active recently. She has been fighting for these missing persons. and enforced disappearances within the province, and it has created some support for Maharang Baloch and her movement, and basically she has got huge public support. But these movements have been unable to create some significant impact within the province that could interact constructively within the conflict and pressurize the government due to certain reasons. And as we discussed earlier, one of the key factor in that is because there has been tokenistic representation of Baloch representatives, and the provincial governments and political parties also lack substantive influence, often prioritizing federal or personal interest within the government. That is the governance framework, that benefits what they extract, those are more personal rather for the province. And thirdly, this is also very critical that the state is very much proactive in co-opting the leaders which it thinks could make some difference and extract some concessions for the Baloch people, like this Maulana Hidayatur Rahman. I mentioned earlier this Hakdo Tehreek. He was later co-opted. He is no more vocal. He is no more pursuing his agenda of rights for the Baloch people. So he is part of the mainstream federal scheme where all is going well within the province. So we can conclude this resistance and agency debate within the province, like saying that local resistance movements illustrate weak agency, challenging top-down development paradigms. This invites parallels with post-colonial theories of elite capture and fragmented dissent. A brief comparison some people provided during interviews, that how Chinese engagement is different from other countries who are engaging in economic and development projects within the province. So I think time is going much faster. I will be a little bit brief. So Ricodic is one project that is Canadian company Barrick Gold, and people think local people, the interviews, the people who were interviewed, not all, this is only a representative sample, they think that is better than Chinese project because this is improved community engagement there in this project. Secondly, in the beginning, this Gwadar Fish Harbour was operated by a Belgian firm between 1988 and 1992, that B6. So local people, some of them think that they had better and positive historical memory, and there were fair wages, and these CSR practices were better. But in contrast, the CPEC projects, they say the Chinese company, the people are morally skeptic towards these companies and they resist. And there are limited local benefits, and security concerns have been growing. Theoretical and policy implications of this Chinese engagement, there are four main takeaways from these interviews. I will briefly describe them. First, while realistic perspectives, that is power and security, explain Pak-China geostrategic cooperation, CPEC's extractive practices and debt dynamics align with dependency theory, positioning China as a new colonial actor. This is one finding from those interviews. Secondly, human security paradigm is very important because redirecting focus from state security to local livelihood could mitigate alienation and violence, but that's not happening. Decentralized governance that is required by empowering the provincial governments and integrating local stakeholders in planning may enhance project legitimacy. CSR, because this is the major concern, and some people even in that comparison in the previous slides said that this is very important because lessons from Barrick Gold and European firms suggest that CSR can reduce friction. Systematic inequities require broader reforms within the province. Further recommendations for interviews and research could be ethnographic studies more going to more people, different segments of society, youth, women, and the critical gaps which I see in these interviews, which we will try to somehow address, the gendered impacts, environmental costs, and views of non-state actors. We didn't count on that. And finally, comparative BRI case studies, like we will see some people working in Africa and other regions where BRI-linked projects are going on. We can compare how they relate to CPEC within Pakistan. So further discussion we can see in question-answer session. Yeah, thank you very much.
Can I ask? Yeah, can I ask Bilal and Nabil just to join us? Now we have a short time, but if there is some questions coming up, it would be great. I'm going to ask the first question. We also connect this with the geopolitics and
That's right.
China's interest in the region. Can you say something briefly on how this is unfolding at the moment, given the change in the geopolitics?
Yeah, there are several perspectives, so we can discuss all this, what is going on in geopolitical context. One is linked with the internal security, and Sabda has mentioned in his presentation. And there's two major stakeholders are involved. First, of course, is Afghanistan, who is somehow responsible for triggering the internal security challenges and the crisis in the Pakistan. And second is Iran. And in state narrative, of course, India is another factor. And the state institutions believe that India is also provoking conflict in Pakistan. So this is the first context, and which is basically increasing the Pakistan's security infrastructure demands, and who can come and fulfill these demands. So this is also challenging. And the dilemma is that though the China would be the major beneficiary after Pakistan of improving security situation in our region, but we are looking towards the West and mainly towards the US to fulfill all or these security requirements. So this is a bit paradoxical in the local context, but when we will see unfold on the broader strategic level, then it make little sense. And Pakistan need to balance relation with US and China. This is somehow is bit challenging, and the reason that Chinese interest Pakistan has increased, whatever the reasons, CPEC, BRI, or the other geopolitical reasons, but the US somehow has lost its interest, and of course the NATO in Afghanistan and this region, and only Pakistan is trying to cultivate their interest again. And maybe one is Afghanistan, and second is Iran. So these are the two, I think, the critical regions Pakistan thinks it can play and align its strategic interest with the West and with the US. So this is in the political context. For military establishment, of course, the Pakistan have only one security fear. All security doctrine is Indian centric. And if one may say that what is Pakistan's security policy, we will say Pakistan has only one security policy, it's Indian centric. And is see Afghanistan, neighborhood, China, US, West, everything is see through this lens. So this is very critical. When Pakistan had initiated this CPEC, so they had India in their mind in geo-economic context, and again to be balanced with its strategic equations with India. So now when we went in the Chinese bloc, then we lose balance with the West, whatever the other factors. And now we again trying to, because the West and the US more valuable in international context, balancing our relationship with India. because India is huge, its military capabilities are increasing, and is totally unmatchable with Pakistan. And Pakistan is a compulsion to have good relation with the US. And whenever India or whatever the other internal factors in regional factor trigger any conflict with India, so someone will come and can do intervention diplomatically and politically between India and Pakistan. As we have seen, China never have intervened, and China doesn't have the capacity to intervene in these kind of the reconciliation, diplomatic reconciliation processes. So this is, we know that this is the US. There is even the Trump got the more capacity to to deal with this kind of the initiative. So this is, I think, bit complex. So internal security, our geostrategic context, so this is bit complex, and they are overlapping with each other.
Thank you very much. I think some of these issues that you mention now is also what we see that is happening in other parts of the world, especially Africa. So I'd just like to open up if there are any questions from the audience to our distinguished guests. Cyril, please.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much. This was really interesting and very insightful. I'm looking at what China and the US are doing in South Sudan in Africa, and I see some similarities. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more, Amir, about how Pakistan are balancing this US China engagements, because I see that that's also somewhat challenging for African countries.
I think it's a bit challenging for Pakistan. As I mentioned, that with the US, we hasn't any leverages to balance, and it's disturbing our relationship with China as well. And China, maybe last year it was very decisive year in Pakistan-China year, and in terms of internal security and our relation with the US, and Pakistan was very enthusiastic to have developed its relationship with the US, and our army chief, of course, the military establishments, the movers and doers in the country. So he had visited US, which created some sense in China that Pakistan is manipulating its relationship with creating balance with the US. So this is critical. With China, we have a lot of convergences, not only the CPEC, because the Chinese companies are working on many mega projects in Pakistan, which funded by the World Bank, IMF, and Pakistan's own government, including Tharkol, the Diamir Pasha Dam, huge $1 billion of where the Chinese can't lose the Pakistan. So usually people think Pakistan is the client state only, or the parasite states eating all the Chinese money. This may not be true. So this is, Pakistan has some few leverages in its relationship with China, but we are losing some thread, our relationship with the US. Rather, US has more leverages on Pakistan, not in the strategic political relationship, because our major exports, textile exports, is basically goes to US, and second is Europe.
Any other questions? If not, I saw Kaya there. No, because if we bring back this to our project,
Yes.
I think you have partly answered to it, but what I'm reading is that those parts of Pakistan that actually need development the most are the one who was then most in opposition to, not necessarily to development, but the development that is seen as coming from the Pakistani state and their way of protecting Chinese interests. So it's for the Chinese, this must be a terrible dilemma, because if they say that they are not going to intervene, still, how do they balance this relationship? They are not immune either to security threats or to local complaints. Is there any indication on how they address this towards the government, towards civil society? Are they intervening? Do they need to leave behind the no intervention thinking And in case, what kind of leverage could they hold on the government? How could they address some of the conflicts?
For who?
Yeah, I think this is mainly the dilemma of Pakistani state, because Pakistani state has been failing in evolving a framework of center-province relationship, where the peripheral regions don't have grievances, the less developed regions. But there is not that equitable development within Pakistan. There are certain regions which are less developed and less privileged even. They say we are even discriminated. So when China intervened, the situation already within Pakistan was like this, a acute and very conflicted type of center provinces relationship. So this conflict further exacerbated that relationship, rather than providing certain constructive sort of tools to manage those conflicts. So China basically, as Mr. Rana said rightly, that China doesn't have that experience also, because it had not been doing these things globally. So they don't understand what to do. If you ask me, I think that they are still confused. They don't know how to intervene. So they are doing some tactical adjustments here and there. For instance, they will try to engage with provincial governments on certain for the enhancing the trade development, just more optics and theatrics than the practical engagement, because the federal government is seen as part of Chinese larger scheme. So Balochistan sees it in similar way. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, he was telling yesterday, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Chamber of Commerce, they engaged Chinese in that platform. So this is not going to resolve unless Pakistani federal government itself moves towards better central provinces that relationship, and has something to offer politically and through engagement, not through militarization, not through enhanced kinetic and security operations, but through more political engagement. That is something that will help indirectly to Chinese engagement.
Now, maybe the last question, and that goes for you as well, because I think what we notice in this project as well is that when a state is getting under threat, they are also trying to limit the space for public debates and for opinions that is countering both to their own interest and possibly also to the Chinese interest, making it extremely difficult for us to do the research, at least on social media. But can you say just a bit on what kind of restriction that has come in place and how this influence on the public debate in Pakistan?
Thank you, Arne, and thank you for inviting us here. So there are a lot of restrictions in Pakistan on social media, because if the mainstream media always is not a good source of information nowadays, you have to go to the social media. Because the government can give a set of rules to TV channels or newspapers that this you can say, this you can't say, things like that. For your own view and getting to the point, you must go to social media. So the government is imposing some of sanctions, or what you say, it's prohibiting the many of social media accounts and social media platforms, banning them, making it hard, difficult day by day to access them. So, for example, the most famous social media platform people use, it's X, Twitter, previously Twitter. It is blocked in Pakistan from last 3 years. So it makes it so hard that you have to use a virtual private VPN network to access those. So it makes so much hard to get into information, and for that hurdle you could have a VPN in Pakistan, but again they go to the Chinese, they buy a firewall to block those VPNs. It didn't work, so it make the internet connectivity so slow. And it's not only affecting the people who are spreading the truth or going. Pakistan have a good IT sector as well. and because of that, they don't want you to have a fast internet access. And if nowadays, if you are working in the IT sector, you need to be connected with the social media as well, because if you see the modern, I give you a simple example, the modern login system, they use a simple system. You just click on your Twitter account and you're logged in. You don't need to get your username and password. So in Pakistan, they have made it difficult for these things because accessing them is hard. So they go and they buy a Chinese firewall, which created one of a more problem. It makes the internet so slow you can't surf, so they have to finish it. Now they're going that if you're using VPN, you have to register it with the government, that why you are using it and what is the purpose of using it. So again, it's so hard, and for research purposes, it's very hard to get good data.
So this is what we are working on, and we'll be working on for the next year.
Yes.
So, but thanks a lot for this brief introduction and the excellent analysis of what is going to happen, or what's happening at the moment. So we're following this for another year, and I hope we have some discussions internally here with some experiences from other countries. But thanks a lot for coming, and let's keep this discussion going. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us here.
Great.
Okay, good.